Hi and welcome to today's video. My name is Kim, also known as Yarning for a Smile, and today's focus is going to be, if you saw the thumbnail, Humble Beginnings. This series is just a way for me to share with you the things that happen during my week, things that I'm thankful for in my everyday life as well as my crafting life. So I hope you grab a project, grab a cup of coffee, sit back and enjoy. This week has been a week of cleaning and letting go of things. It is crazy how much stuff you can accumulate in 10 years, especially in this one room that used to be my craft room that's now the storage room. I spent several days just really cleaning out that room, and in the process of doing so, I've come across some things that I wanted to share with you guys. I've mentioned before, when I first started crocheting, my husband got me that green yarn and that beige yarn and I think it was a boy how to crochet book, and it had the metal aluminum hooks, and that's how I taught myself to crochet. And the first thing I made was I tried to make a circle, but I wasn't very good at increasing, so it made like this cup looking thing, and I used it for a hat on a bird. I remember talking about that, but I've never been able to find it to actually show you guys, and when I was cleaning out that room, I found it. It looked cute with a hat on because I didn't know what to do with this, but I knew I didn't want to get rid of it because it was the first thing I've ever made. All the way back in December of 2012. But this was supposed to be a flat circle. That's what I was aiming for. I got about here and I realized it started making not a flat circle. So I just kind of went with it and decided I was just going to keep on and make it to something. I don't know what. But you can see where I practiced doing some crocheting in the back loop. I practiced doing some increases. I tried to make some kind of decorative stitch here, but it did not work. And there's like a crazy tension issues here, where you can see that a couple of stitches are so much bigger than the other ones. But you know, this is one of the first things I made, so I didn't let it hold me down. And I don't even know, I think I was doing a bunch of back loop stuff going on there. I don't even know what's going on with that. So I just kept making it because I had this in front of me because it was around Christmas. And this was on the table next to me, this little bird. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to turn it into a hat to the owl. And for the longest time, this was the thing that I used for my avatar for Ravelry and for my blog, was this little owl and this first creation. Do we call it a creation? We're going to call it a creation. So not only did I find him, who has been missing for a very long time, I found my original knitting and crochet journals. I found out about Ravelry literally 3 days after learning to do basic crochet and getting my first yarn and hook, because I signed up for Ravelry on January the 1st, 2013. And even before that, pretty much the day I got my yarn, I'd already been planning on some kind of blogger name or brand. I don't want to say brand because I didn't really want it to be a brand or anything then. Just a name so I can actually have, change my YouTube channel over to this as its focus and kind of share my journey. And I did. I had a bunch of beginning videos, but unfortunately when YouTube took down my original channel, all of those were deleted. That room was so I can actually get to my old tower. I'm going to try to hook it up to my newer computer and see if I can locate some of those files. And I also found a box of old CDs where I think I burned and backed up a lot of copies of my original content to those. I'm hoping I can find some of it because I would love to share that with you guys on my new channel. But while I was digging through all the boxes and stuff that I'd stored in there, I found my journals. When I signed up for Ravelry, I knew that it was going to be amazing for what I wanted to do as far as keep up with my yarn and keep up with my projects. But because we were getting into that age of social media around 2013, that it being a forum-based website like it is, I didn't know the longevity of it and how long it was going to last. I honestly was worried that there was going to be something that come along and took over its platform, and then all of my hard work of putting everything in there would be to waste. So I decided to come up with a paper version of Ravelry, which was my notebooks, and I also wanted to be able to put the used ball wrappers in the folder as well as snippets of the yarn. And I know on Ravelry you can link the yarns you use, because I do it all the time, just so I can go back and look, and you can add photos of the yarn. But seeing a photo and seeing like a snippet of the actual yarn are two different things, because that yarn is something you can touch, and touch, being one of our main senses, helps us bring back memories and emotions that are tied to that. Not to mention, I was a die-hard scrapbooker back in the day, and I've always been a pen and paper kind of gal. So it was just something that was just right up my alley. So this was my first one that I used. And originally this started off as a garden journal, and I wrote in here my gardening book in memory, and it has my grandmother's name because she was the avid gardener in our family. But I'd only done like a couple of pages, and then I decided to keep this journal and with that page in there because she was also the crafter in our family. My mom was somewhat a crafter, but my grandmother, my dad's mom, was artist hippie woman at heart. She loved being outside. She loved being in her gardens. She had flower gardens and vegetable gardens and herb gardens, but she also loved to create and craft. And she was a quilter, and she was a painter, and she loved to do ceramics. She used to sew, and she just did a lot of other house DIY things. She was constantly redoing furniture. And I have a photo that I'll insert here. So this church that we're looking at now is actually something that she made in one of her classes. And she painted them, she created the little stuff for the stained glass and finished it. And it's just been something that my mom's had ever since she passed away. She used to have this huge quilt rack that would come off of the ceiling and pull down. And she also had this big circle quilt rack that was on a stand in the floor. She used to always do embroidery too. That's another one. She was really good at doing embroidery. She never really did cross stitch, but actual hand embroidery. I honestly think I got that creative gene from her because she was just an amazing crafter. So the first entry in this book was from December the 28th, 2012. And I cut the snippets of the brown yarn and the green yarn. And the green yarn, I've shown this before. This is one of the other first practice things I did that day. And I don't even know what it is. I mean, there's some weird increased things going on. I was just trying to learn how to hold the hook in a way that would not hurt my hand. And also just learn basic stitches. And so I actually made this into a pin cushion. But my first entry says Project Learn to Crochet. Again, this is 2012. I was a lot younger, people. Hook or needle I used was a Boy H hook yarn bought at Walmart. And it was Red Heart Super Saver. This is actually called Frosted Green. For the longest time I thought this was called Sage, but I actually wrote down Frosted Green. And Red Heart Beige. Used in no pattern. Also this day I made this cup cozy, and I don't know where this is. I kind of remember seeing it. Okay. Honestly, I do remember seeing it when I was cleaning the first of the week. But I've had a migraine on and off for probably about 6 to 7 days now. And I remember seeing it, and I remember setting it aside to show you guys. I cannot tell you where I put it. I've even looked all day. So unfortunately, when that thing pops back up, I'll be more than happy to share that with you. Talk and kind of write like a little bit of a journal page regarding the project. So this day it says, learning to crochet and using the frosted green, crochet to chain and then joined. I increased several times. I used the piece to make a pin jar flower cover. I called that a flower. Using the beige, I repeated the process. So this is after, this was the first thing. Okay, we see that. This is the second thing. And the third thing I made is a thing I can't find. Using the beige, repeated the process, increasing the size of the bottom of a small mason jar. I then stopped increasing and went up. And basically I made like a mason jar koozie. Or I made a flower and then sewed on a button of the flower. And I don't think I had a pattern for that. I think I was just trying to play. And the flower looks like there's no pattern for it. It looks pretty crazy. So then I wrote my thoughts for the day. I'm so happy that Lee grabbed, at least my husband, grabbed me yarn and hooks. I had been sick with the flu and wanted to learn. The yarn is soft but very plastic feeling. I drew a frowny face. Okay, so it gets better. So then, January the 1st, 2013, and I wrote Happy New Year. Project Color for Abby. Now, Abby is my son's stuffed dog, was my son's stuffed dog, because now he's 15 and this dog's put up in the chest. But actually, if you saw the thumbnail, the dog on the front, that's Abby, and she's wearing her collar that I made her. So I used my boy H hook again and yarn scraps. This time I went to my mother-in-law's house. So let's back up for a second. Let's talk real fast about why I wanted to knit and crochet. Besides, to be part of the cool kids. She did not suffer the brain injury that she did from the car wreck. I may have never got yarn and a crochet hook in knitting. I may have not ever touched it and had the desire to ever do that. As weird as it sounds, I'm not thankful that she had to go through all that, but I'm thankful that that bump in the journey of our life led me here. I'm thankful for that. Because when she had her car wreck, and it was around April of 2012, the injury from her brain affected the part that does early onset Alzheimer's. And they told us that it would probably be an abrupt, noticeable change in her life. So immediately I started researching ways to help slow down as much as I could. There's actually these classes that our local hospital does through state Alzheimer's research people that nurses have to sit in to get some kind of credits. And I was able to sit on several of those classes. And one of those classes, they talked about things that people can do to help slow down the effects. One of them was crafts, especially like sewing or reading, that the patient had did prior in their life, maybe for a long time, because all that just kind of gets set in that long-term memory, and especially crafts like sewing or cross-stitching or embroidery, because that's part of also your muscle memory. So I began researching that more, and it's actually a scientific fact. There's been studies, I think from the Mayo Clinic, where knitting and crochet is proven to slow down disease and damage to your brain, and it helps elongate your memory and your effectiveness to remember things. So I'd actually known that my mother-in-law used to knit and crochet because I'd seen yarn in her house. Now, I met her son in 2006. I met her son in 2004. We got married in 2006. Never seen her touch yarn in all that time, ever. But I knew that she had some yarn. And so I asked her about it, and she was like, yeah, I used to knit and crochet, which she's also Austrian, and it was just part of her culture. It's not really a hobby over there. Like, they just used to knit and crochet, especially during the war, because she grew up during World War II in Austria, as a way of life. So I knew this had to be muscle memory. So I set out to teach myself in an effort to try to re-spark that desire to do those things within her. So that's why I'm actually knitting and crocheting. And that's why I'm here sitting in front of you talking to you about all this stuff on Thankful Thursday. I actually went over and got some of this blue yarn because my son wanted blue yarn for Abby's collar and I didn't have any. And I knew that she had some. And I wrote that Abby is a stuffed dog he got from Mama and Papa after Mama's first dachshund died. He wanted a collar that had Abby's name on it, so I crocheted a chain, did single crochet around using black yarn and bordered Abby on it. And I had no pattern. And then from there, I just kind of go on and start doing more projects. I'd actually take photos, and I'd also cut snippets of yarn. And sometimes I would put the label, especially if I used up a whole yarn. So this is a headband that I did. And then I did some garland. And this was using some cherry red Heart Super Saver at Hobby Lobby. Was $2.99 back then. Even their yarn is going up to like $5.99. That's a thing. So that was in January the 14th, 2013. And I even put snippets of the yarn color I use. And I included a photo. And I just made this little garland. The easiest way to do the photos, I think, is when you take your photos, save them in one section on your phone, because you can create a folder to put your photos in on your phone, or you can create a folder on your PC. Put those folders and those photos in that folder, and then once every couple of weeks, just put them all on one sheet to print and make them like little 2x2s or 2x3s, and then print them off on an 8.5-11 sheet of paper. It's a lot cheaper, it'll save you money, and it's just a lot easier because you can just cut them out. So then I made a trivet, and I used Red Heart Super Saver again for this, which is acrylic. And I learned a very valuable lesson January the 13th, 2013, and that is acrylic yarn melts. So I still have my little trivet, but it does have some melted places. So that's why if you make those, you need to use cotton. Then I remember going to Hobby Lobby, because this was January the 14th. When I first started, the only place I would ever buy yarn is Walmart and Hobby Lobby, because that's all I had access to, I thought. I did not learn about local yarn stores probably until, I would say, April or even May of 2013. And I didn't really start going to a knit night, I think, until that fall, like August of 2013. I went to Hobby Lobby, and there was this, I love this yarn. And this colorway is called Gelato Stripe. And I remember seeing this and thinking, it is so pretty. I was just mesmerized by all the colors in this one yarn. And having only used Red Heart's Super Saver, like the quality as far as softness was so much different than what I'd used before. And I was just like, what is this? Amazing soft stuff. And so I'd made, and I think I still have these mittens. I unfortunately have no idea where those are currently. They're not where I thought they were, because I just went to go check. But I can show you the photo. I love this yarn, and the colorway again is called Gelato Stripe. I used 251 yards, and here's the kicker. This is January the 14th. Okay, I'm only really 17 days in of my first hook and yarn. Pattern, none. I remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to make these tubes, and I'm just going to leave places for my thumbs. So I would chain, and I would hold it around my arm to see if it would fit. I knew I'd read that yarn grew. I didn't know that was only really with natural fibers. So I just kind of made it so that it was like kind of snug to allow for growth with wear, but not too snug. And then I crocheted, and I actually tracked my decreases so that they would match. And then when I got to where the thumbs were going to be, instead of going in the round, I would just work back and forth to allow, and I would just keep putting this thing on constantly. I remember sitting there putting this thing on, and then crocheting some more, taking it off, putting it back on, crocheting some more, and I would just keep going back and forth till I got a big enough hole for my thumb to go in. And then I continued going back in the round to go over the part of my fingers. And I was so proud of those fingerless mitts. And I wrote in there, I love my fingerless mitts. My hands get so cold, they hurt. They do. Because of the plates and pins. You can see that scar there. And this scar is actually in a weird place. It's like right here. So both of my arms only have plates. I have one bone in each arm, and the rest is just plates and pins. I crocheted them in the round, and the yarn is so soft. I see me using it a lot more in the future. It's so funny to read this. I even stuck the label, and I stuck, because this is such a variegated yarn, I just cut out different sections and put in here so I could see all the colors in it. Oh, the price tag's cut off. I would love to see how much it was at that point. So then I got some more I Love This yarn in like the blue that was kind of like it, and I made my son a hat. And all these projects I think are on my Ravelry page. And my projects. And I just did that. I just kept doing that. Every project I would make a page and put a photo and some information. This was actually, oh no, I remember this. So this was from February, and I did actually visit a yarn store. And this was even the yarn store that's less down from me. This one was actually the one in Gadsden. And I can't remember how I found out about it, but it was Taming of the Ewe, which is still a yarn store that I love to go to, Miss Pat. I don't think she watches this, but I'm going to give her a little yarn store shout out, and I'm going to link it below because I love that yarn store. And if you're ever driving through Alabama, you know, and you're going through Gadsden, Alabama, you need to stop. She also has hot tea that she sells. It's like a tea and yarn store. It's amazing. It smells like heaven in there. But this was before she even had that store. She had a little store on the corner because it's like in this older building in downtown Gadsden. It was a couple blocks down, and it was just a little small hole in the wall. And I went in there with my mother, and it was kind of a rectangle building. It was very narrow. And this yarn was, it's Uptown Worsted, I think is what it is, if I remember correctly. Universal Yarn, Uptown Worsted, yes. So when you walked in, there was like this little, about waist high, cubed metal grid thing, and there was a wall of yarn and some more yarn on this wall. And this was kind of right at the front. And I remember seeing it, and it was so soft. Like, it was even softer than the I Love This yarn. And it was thinner. And I was like, I want to try the thinner yarn. It's actually called worsted, but it's more of a light worsted. It's more of a DK. Now that I, know about yarn, I can say that. But at the time, I just thought it was like, I was blown up, like, so confused. Why is it thinner? And I used the pattern Crochet Lattice Headband by Jana Grassel, and I'll actually link that below. But this was my first, like, real pattern to use to make something, and I remember like, oh, this is so exciting. And I made this headband for this little girl at church who always helped me when I worked the preschool department, which I did a lot, but I had to quit because I constantly got sick from those sweet little babies. But she used to always come in there, and her name is Dana, and so I made her this headband because she always wore headbands, and she loved bright pinks. And the colorway is actually called Bright Salmon. And I took a picture of it. And I even put some of the yarn there. But if I can still find that pattern on Ravelry, I'll also link it below. I'm not gonna go through every one of these because, yeah. I'll just show you guys some photos of some of these. Oh, there's some random things falling out. This is a fun one. So this is August the 2nd, 2013. This is my first knit project. So I decided to try knitting. So actually it was like the last week of July is when I really got my first needles and yarn. And you can kind of see photos in the background of this of my original craft room and my first yarn wall. And that's acrylic because that's all I knew about still. To the yarn store in Gadsden, but I didn't have the money at that time to buy nicer yarns, and I wasn't sure that I was worthy. Not really say worthy. I wasn't sure if my skill was worthy of natural yarn for the price. So for my first knit project, I used Lion brand, and this is Hometown USA, and it was the solid Little Rock granite. And I used size 13 needles, which is 9mm, and I had knitted the Lion brand Woodside hat. And this hat was a knit flat hat with a seam in the back. And like on the little mannequin person, it looks pretty good. Like it looks like some good knitting. But if you turn that sucker around and saw the seam, it looked like something off a Frankenstein movie. It was horrible. It was so horrible. But it was just so bad. And I promise, I'm like, I'm not going to seam ever again. This is ridiculous. I'll just mix stuff in around. And I have not seamed since. Well, I mean, I've done some seams. I've done seams like on the sides of a poncho. But if there's any way possible to go around seaming, your girl finds it. And I will alter a pattern these days to do it. Just because I hate seaming. And I had such horrors from that experience trying to learn to seam on my own, not having someone to ask. And not having still the skill set of YouTube to watch videos to do it. I was just trying to read about it in a book and like figure it out, and it was not pretty. So this first book goes through patterns all the way until, and I actually used like this almost the entire, I did use it the entire year. Even the last page. The last page was my sock head hat. I made the first one because I've made several since then, of June the 23rd, 2014. And then there was no more room. So I got to the second book. And as you can see, it's pretty full too. I used this one all the way up to $2016 was the last thing I wrote in here. And it was my, sorry. The last thing I wrote in this journal was January the 6th, 2016 through January the 8th, 2016. A pair of knitted knockers for the bob. Here's the label. The bob is what we called my aunt. And my aunt, my dad's sister, found out she had breast cancer in December. And she died 2 days before Mother's Day. She lost her battle. And I made her knockers and a chemo hat. Okay, sorry. Had a little bit of an emotional moment. Okay, now. I do miss my Aunt Bobby. I was pretty close to her. I loved her. This book I started getting a little bit more creative with my entries. They weren't just, I mean there was some just yarn and labels, but there was more writing about the project and emotions that went with project. I really started tying my craft life to emotions at this point, even like 1 year in, and even to this day I still do. But there's a lot more writing. But I also decided when I did my first sweater that it would be a great way to put and save the swatch. And, you know, this is a great way to really keep up with things like that and have these little memory scrapbooks basically of your crafting, because we all start from somewhere. And it's really nice to go back and see these projects all over again, especially, you know, even that moment with my aunt. I don't remember if that's the reason why I put this down, but, you know, it warms my heart to see that page. But that's my first official sweater swatch I did, and that's when I was making my sweater. This is a project card that I made to put with my swatches. If you guys are interested in these, I think I still have that file. I can post it as a download, I think in the community tab, if y'all want it. And it just has a place where you put the name of the yarn, the color, the fiber content, how many stitches you had before blocking, after blocking, the needles that you used, and the date. And then it has a little circle thing on there for hand wash or machine wash, just so you can remember what you did with your swatch. But you know, just let me know in the comments. Yeah, but that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. You know, just some ideas of things to do to kind of have ways to look back and be thankful for the progress and what you've learned and how you've got from one part to the other. Also, real quick, I found these. So those crochet hooks I was talking about that I got in that Learn to Crochet kit, these are them. These are them. I think I'm missing one or two hooks, but I quickly realized there's a piece of fuzz flying. Do y'all see that? That's funny. So I quickly realized that with my shattered arms and plates and pins, that the metal hooks were not a good solution for me. That I was developing severe hand cramping. And I'm a knife holder. This is exactly how I hold my crochet hook. And I'd seen people sell clay hooks, and I'm like, I can do that. Why pay for that? So I did, as you can see, to all of them. And this really worked out for a long time. However, this adds weight to your crochet hooks, a considerable amount of weight to your crochet hooks, which also leads to hand fatigue and cramping. So that's kind of when I discovered clover hooks, and from there I'm now a furls person. I still touch my clover armoires. I love them, don't get me wrong, but I love my furls as well. But I wanted to show you guys some of the hooks that I had made with clay. So this is one of them. It's blues. And then this, I even wrote on the bottom part what size. This is a G. This is a D. I had a lot of fun making these, and you just use the clay, make them, and then cook them in the oven, allow them to dry because they get very hot. And then I put a clear coat of the polymer sealer on them. There's an F. This is an E, and this one I started getting creative, and I actually would push right there where I hold my hook to make a actual thumb rest. But I like this one because it kind of looks like it should glow in the dark, but it doesn't. This one is a B, and again you can see it has that flatter spot where I can have a thumb rest. And this one is the I, as is the J. This is the I. This one's the C, especially the little ones. I did all the little ones with the flatter area. And this one's the H. And obviously it was around Halloween because I made it candy corn. And then I wanted to get really artsy, and I got this Z, or N hook, not Z. And we were going to the Smoky Mountains, and I was working on something that required this hook. So I actually made kind of like a bee, and then I made a bear. So I don't know if you can see him. But he is a black grizzly bear, and he's holding on to the hook. And as adorable as he is, it makes this thing so heavy. And then after I spent all the time making this little adorable bear, I'm like, I don't want it to break, so I've never really even used it since. But those are my crochet hooks. Another fun thing to look back is when I first started knitting and I wanted to have all these stitch markers, and even crocheting, a lot of times I used the rubber ones, and the Knitter Pride rubber ones were my original favorite, but now I make mine out of jewelry pieces. But I needed a place to keep them, and this is an Altoids tin. You can see where it says Altoids. And I actually would cut scrapbook paper to size and put it on there, and then I would seal it with Mod Podge. I have so many of these tins. I would buy Altoids just to eat them to make stitch marker tins. And they're still all around my house. But the fun thing about them is I could actually use my needle holders for cross stitch and stick them in there, and then put the little darning needle between it if I had to and make it stay, but also just to decorate them. So that's why this cat's in there. But that was a fun little beginning thing. And then I have one more thing to show you that I found in the process of cleaning out, and that was my first time doing a African, I think this one was called, an African flower motif. And I started off with just this here, the center all the way to the yellow, but then I decided to go bigger because I wanted to make it a wall hanging and like kind of a teardrop shape. And my original thought process was to make several different kind of these, kind of like different mandalas, and I wanted to hang them on the wall in my craft room. But then I got rid of my craft room. But one day I'll have another craft room. When my oldest son moves out, I'm taking over his room. It's only a few years away. It's fine. So I can hold out to them because he's already 15. But, yeah. And this is all vintage yarn from my mother-in-law's stash. And it's all that wind tuck, I think is what it was, and some early red heart. Like this purple is like super old red heart. And this green, I don't even know what it is. I think it was actually Kmart yarn. And I know the yellow is the Dupont, and, or maybe the yellow was the wind tuck. But this was some vintage yarn, and this stuff feels like it. It is so horrible. But it came out pretty, and that's all that mattered to hang on the wall. It wasn't the best crocheting. I mean, it was, you know, and I didn't know how to tie an end, so you can see there's like this ugly knot right there. Just there. Hoping it never comes undone. Yeah. I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos that I put together for you guys, and I hope you take some time this week to just be thankful for what got you to where you are in your life and in your crafting. See you later. Good morning, friends, and welcome to still week 2 of thank-ember. And I am actually sitting in the floor of the storage room that I've been working on for several days, but I'm not done with it, to be honest with you, because what I've been doing in here is just really cleaning out. When I moved out of this craft room, we started using it for storage because we do not have a basement, and it just kind of got like really bad in here. Like you could hardly even walk, and now there's a lot of space, but I still have to go through this really big thing because that's paint supplies, because I'm currently repainting our entire house on the inside. And all of these 2 drawers and this stuff right here was things that were in my big desk that I had in here. So I have to go through those. As part of my Thanksgiving thing and being thankful, I finished the book of Timothy this morning. So I'll show you what that looks like for me. So I read through Timothy this week, and as you can see, it gets a little crazy when I do my Bible studies. I read Timothy 6 this morning, and I'll share with you guys one of my favorite verses. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith. Take hold of the eternal life which you are called, and about which made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. So, fight the good fight. And this cart I have in the floor just so I can sit in the floor and use the stuff on the cart, because this is all my stamps I have some gelatos there, which are kind of like markers you can use for watercolors, etc. And I have some more of the wax markers. And then these are just little Bible journaling things and other paper craft things. I actually keep all my scrapbook paper in the closet here in plastic bins that are pulled out. I also have all my stitch marker making supplies in one place now. Those are all my vintage needles that I use for blocking wires, actually. So this room is now a productive place for me, so I can come in here and sit and craft, planner craft, or even do some stuff, you know, in my Bibles or planner. So yeah, so now this room is a productive room for me, and I managed to complete the book of Timothy this week. So I showed y'all where I read through 2 and 3 the other day, and I finished up through 4, 5, and I completed 6 this morning, which covered one of my favorite verses, which is 1 Timothy 11 through 12, and it talks about the things that we should pursue as Christians, as well as we should fight the good fight. But I did want to show you guys this. So this is the trunk. Now there is some fiber here. So this is all Angora and a couple other random little things like some coils, but that's all one indie dyer fiber, Green Dragon yarns. But it's not my favorite fiber, but this trunk. Oh, let me let you have a little peek. So as you can see, this is where spinning fiber lives. And it's in here to protect it from dust and bugs, because there's lavender things everywhere. But I have a bunch of Malabrigo. And this is a really pretty braid from, I think this is Gail's Art. Yep, Gail's Art. I think it's called Owl. Yep, Owl. Wow, I remember buying that at Stitches. This is a fun, another one of Gail's Art. This is called Miss Bluebird. Look how pretty that is. Oh my goodness. And then here's my fall fiber that I didn't even spin up when I got this, and it's Fiber Knit Dye Works. And you can see I have some of the Noro fiber back here, pencil roving. I've got some Highland Handmaids, which they're just amazing in general. And then I have a lot of things from the Smoky Mountain Spinnery, because I love going there. And this one just reminds me of Christmas, but it's called Autumn and Autumn Merino Tinsel. But it's really, really pretty. It's in that bag because it's kind of grabby. And then I got this really cool bat. But I mean, it's just, this thing is full of fiber without being squished, because you don't want to squish your fiber ever. And this is some more Malabrigo. It actually matches the trunk. But this is something I have to get back into doing. There's some more Smoky Mountain Spinnery. And I'm happy to get back to doing that. Look at this fun bat. This is an amazing bat. I forgot where I got this from, but look at the sparkles in there. It's so crazy. Oh, okay. Enough of that. So this guy was actually on my glass door, but we're gonna let him go over here in the little flower bed because he eats plants, vegetation, and they love leaves. So he'll find him some good leaves to eat. And plus he's safer over here because he can blend in.